Hello, and welcome to the Charles River Conservancy Parkland Show. My name is Renata von Tscharner. I'm the founder and president of the Charles River Conservancy, and we are going to have a conversation with somebody who knows the river well, both from his studies and from his current work. Welcome, Nadeem Mazen.
Thank you very much.
It's great. Nadeem is a brand new or almost brand new city councilor, and so we're going to hear the view of his both official as well as when you grew up here.
Mm-hmm.
So Nadeem, tell us what you did before you were a city councilor.
Sure.
And what is your story with the river?
Okay, well, I came to Cambridge in 2002 to study at MIT. The story there is I lived on the river in a new house at MIT for 4 years, and I guess I'm sorry to say we didn't make better use of it, but I have been an educator at the high school, after school, college, professor, graduate school level, teaching at various levels, and I have a few businesses that are education oriented in Cambridge, teaching people how to do art and engineering and all kinds of things. As I was saying to you in some of our earlier conversations, I grew up in the ozone layer kind of ecological craze where we were all very worried that it was past the point of no return, and I realized that with kind of clear policy work, my generation and the generation of adults kind of in control at the time could actually make real difference, and that the key was identifying and measuring the problems in our ecological balance, and then coming back before reaching the point of no return. So it started my interest.
Good. And we will have in the show a chance to see Nadeem's film called Net Zero, which is very much being discussed in Cambridge, and you made a wonderfully witty, fast-paced, informative movie, and we will see that.
There's a little animation, yeah.
Yeah,
Lovely.
and so and I know when you went to school along the river, and even today you are a bicyclist, so we will
Yes.
be talking about bicycling along the Charles River.
Yes.
Very good. Well, this is an image that I always show because it shows this extraordinary resource, and we will be looking at just a few places along here. The city of Cambridge has developed this plan called Connecting People to the Charles, and we'll be looking at Magazine Beach as well as North Point Park, and this is a great planning document that the city of Cambridge has produced, and actually Roger Booth, who was very much instrumental in this plan, he and I and Stuart Dash, we did a show about that program. So if you want to go to YouTube, you can find that show, and this show also today will be on YouTube. So let's move to an area on the river called Magazine Beach. And you probably have seen this area, and again there is a wonderful show I did with Cassie Susie about Magazine Beach if you want to learn about the history. But do you experience Magazine Beach? Do you ever go there? Is that a place that you care much about?
Sure. Well, we were saying of my experience of Mem Drive in general, that both in this report and in kind of a general commonsensical approach to the river, people want to have more access directly to the river. I think many people have an experience of Memorial Drive that if you're on the drive, if you're on the river, you're in danger. And that's a very unfortunate place to find ourselves. We are biking, and bikes and cars can't coexist necessarily very peacefully if you're walking the potholes and the root undergrowth under the sidewalk. So we're in an unfortunate place. Magazine Beach could be a respite from that, and I've definitely found myself in the area quite a bit, and there are some nice entrees down into the river that we have along the whole course of Mem Drive, and we need to both increase the number of those, but also increase the quality of the ones that we have. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the beginning of this discussion.
Yeah. And I think another part of the discussion is what the city of Cambridge role could be. I think the city of Cambridge was instrumental in getting the playing fields done. There was a public-public partnership, and I hope that there can be a public-public partnership for the restoration of the bathhouse, of the beach, because I think it's such an important space for Cambridge, and I hope this an arrangement like that can be found.
I think that's probably very appropriate. My experience of this current council term, and it's probably the case with every council term, is that you, to some extent, without reworking what's already been done, kind of have to reintroduce the same ideas to a new set of stakeholders. And sometimes that's political stakeholders, sometimes with the retirement of Roger Booth or others, that you have to just see who's picking up the baton or who's receiving the baton and running with it.
Yeah.
And so I think it's probably appropriate to this discussion to ask who's interested and to make sure that that conversation continues forward on the city side.
Yeah.
And that's both planning and potential funding. But then there's this other side with DCR, and DCR has its hands full and maybe underfunded as a state agency. But it's very important in the job of a citizen and very important in the job of a local politician to put pressure as a leader. Any of us can be leaders, elected or not, to put pressure on those agencies so that they understand that we value those resources, that this is within their responsibility, and that this can't be a one-sided plan. To the extent that the city can do work like this, great. But the state must understand both its responsibility and the urgency of work like this in a city like Cambridge.
Because the land is owned by the state, although it benefits obviously the citizens of Cambridge, but it is DCR-owned state land. So to find the right way of working together, I think it will be, I'm delighted that you see that as something you want to work on, because it will make a huge difference for the Charles River Parklands, which are such an asset for Cambridge. And if it's left alone to DCR, things would take very long indeed. So let's move to another space here, North Point Park. North Point Park is an amazing new space for Cambridge, which used to be the Cambridge Stump, and now it's parklands built with $100 million of mitigation funds, with a new development going on, EF, that will be a restaurant, a skate park. And I know as a bicyclist, you will be biking here, great new parks. And here's a picture of the new North Bank Bridge, which was funded with $32 million of federal stimulus funds. Wonderful biking, a connection to Charlestown that did not exist before. Really an amazing amenity that we have here.
If I could just say for a moment that, and this will probably be a good segue to the next part of the discussion, but these connections, these walking connections, and these biking connections are so important, not just for quality of life, but it is actually a legitimate economic need to transit from one part of the greater Cambridge area to the other. To be able to go from Charlestown to Cambridge is such a basic part of urban planning. Sometimes it's astonishing that it's taken so long. You know, people in East Boston complain often of kind of being isolated from Boston, but in the same way, parts of Cambridge are isolated from its neighbors in unexpected ways. And that's probably a good segue to what I imagine you're about to say.
Talking about another connection that needs to be made from the river into Cambridge along the railroad track.
The Grand Junction path from the river into Kendall Square and into Somerville is a reasonable, basic rail with a trail proposal. And obviously bringing the rail transit back would be incredible, but that's a longer term effort. What the short term effort is about a beautiful pedestrian and bike track trail through kind of the heart of the city in a way that makes people safe, beautifies the environment, and creates not just a quality of life bump, but an important economic conduit in transit from one city to another.
Well,
it's a no-brainer.
I biked with a group, and we started at the river, and we went all the way to the McGrath Highway. I mean, and then the McGrath Highway, of course, needs to come down to make that a tree-lined boulevard, and so you could have that connection there. And there are a few challenges along the way, but there's a great group working on that, and I'm glad you see that connection.
And the important work right now, just to get concrete about planning, is, or about next steps, is planning. The next step here is that the city is, and many community members are, thinking about how they want this to look, what it might cost, what players would need to be involved, and just make sure that we have a prospectus ready when the state is ready to put funding in, or as I said before, making sure that we put the appropriate pressure on state agencies so that they come to the table sooner.
Yeah, and it's often important, like with the North Bank Bridge, to have a project shovel ready. So when there is either state or federal money available, that plans are there that can be implemented.
Exactly.
So I think this would be a good moment to show your net zero film, and that was part of your campaign. Vote Nadeem when you ran for city councilor.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to just give a brief introduction before we play the film?
Yeah, I'll say that right now that we're lucky to have a net zero task force, and they are really unpacking the issue. But for me, there was so much of the net zero issue that wasn't controversial, that never got talked about. And when people think about net zero energy, they wonder if you're talking about, well, does there have to be solar on every building? And how are we going to do that if we're not Phoenix, Arizona? For me, it's such a simple concept. Net zero is about using large producers of clean energy that already exist in the state, wind and solar, and you can pipe that in through the existing energy conduits that you already use with your N-Star natural gas provider. And instead of getting your energy from natural gas or from some other system coal or some other terrible polluter, you can actually get your energy today for a very small increase and sometimes even a small savings over the existing grid. And for me, that's really the best and first tack towards achieving a net zero Cambridge.
Great. Well, let's watch.
All over Cambridge, people are taking action to protect the environment and to promote sustainability. We're getting more efficient, and we're becoming more aware. And yet, despite these efforts, our carbon footprint continues to grow. We need to stop adding to the concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Otherwise, the climate emergency will get even worse, and research shows that Cambridge could be locked into a future below sea level in as little as 50 years. Clearly, we need to do more. That's why climate activists, urban design experts, and neighborhood leaders are coming together to support Net Zero. Net Zero is a groundbreaking proposal to promote renewable alternatives in the daily operation of large new buildings in the city of Cambridge. Buildings account for 82% of our city's carbon footprint. Getting to net zero is easier than it sounds. That's because we have the ability to choose clean, renewable sources of energy over the grid right now. In fact, alternatives are available for as little as 2 cents more per kilowatt hour. For the typical Cambridge resident, making the switch would add just a few extra dollars to the monthly electric bill. And that's just the beginning. Net zero is about more than choosing alternative suppliers. It's also about promoting efficiency and encouraging investment in on-site generation of renewable energy. Here's some examples of net zero in Cambridge. In June, the city broke ground on the new MLK school on Putnam Ave, a 169,000 square foot building that was designed to achieve net zero status through a combination of smart practices and clean technologies. 60% of the school's power will be generated on-site by photovoltaic panels and ground source heat pumps, and the remaining energy needs can be satisfied by connecting the school to cost-effective alternatives over the grid. Now let's consider a more challenging example, the new home of Millennium Pharmaceuticals at 300 Mass Ave. Developers of this 248,000 square foot biolab have already pledged to supply between 35 and 70% of the building's electrical needs from renewable sources. That's a great start. Now suppose we add 18,000 square feet of solar to the design. Thanks to government incentives, this investment would pay for itself in 4 years. After that, it would yield nearly $1 million in added value, enough to help offset the cost of maintaining the net zero standard. In conclusion, we have the means and the technology to start building for a fossil-free future right here in Cambridge. With net zero, we can ensure that future development does not add to the concentration of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. Net zero has already been endorsed by Bill McKibben, State Senator Will Brown Brownsburger, State Representative Carl Shortino, the Massachusetts Sierra Club, the Cambridge node of 350ma.org, the Harvard chapter of Students for a Just and Stable Future, Green Cambridge, the Cambridge Residents Alliance, the Association of Cambridge Neighborhoods, and over 200 Cambridge residents and local experts. The Net Zero Plan was filed as a citizen zoning amendment by Cambridge attorney Mike Connolly, and it's now pending before the City Council and the Planning Board. Visit www.netzerocambridge.org to sign the petition and learn more.
Tough election.
Thanks.
But when I saw that video, I was very impressed by the clarity and by the speed. So that was wonderful.
Thank you. We're
So-
trying to move through similar issues with that clarity and speed, and it is a lot to take in at once.
All right.
But
Well, let's go to an issue
Mhm.
that we want to see has more speed to it, and that the Cambridge City Council, and you were there that night when it was unanimously voted on, is the underpasses.
Mhm.
So what we're looking at is a map of the Charles River. The yellow band at the bottom is the Dr. Paul Dudley White bike path. The green areas is where it's possible as a bicyclist to go underneath the bridge. The red boxes is where you have to stop and fight the traffic. And I understand you are a bicyclist,
Mhm.
and you probably have bicycled that route a lot.
Yes, I have bicycled that route, and I have tangled with traffic sometimes to my detriment.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. And so the Charles River Conservancy has this campaign going for the underpasses because these bridges are being restored by Mass DOT. So we have now over 40 elected officials and the entire Cambridge City Council. Also Mayor Walsh has signed on, as well as Congressman Capuano and Congresswoman Clark have signed on, and the Charles River Caucus, as I mentioned, many people who have signed on to the net zero, the same people who care about the environment, have signed on, and over 50 groups are in support of the underpasses.
Mhm.
So now the challenge is, how do we implement that?
Mhm.
You've probably seen the Anderson Bridge is torn up, and so we propose to have these underpasses, and Mass DOT has already moved the utilities and has agreed that underpasses should be there. So now the push is to do the design, do the permitting, so that this can be added as a path.
Mhm.
So imagine yourself there on the bike path, because you described to me that even as a pedestrian it can be dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. I think maintenance of the walkways is incredibly important, but certainly I've seen my fair share, especially on crowded days like Marathon Monday, but even on any day of the week, my fair share of pedestrians having some difficulty with the high frequency traffic crossings. So this is like one of these design no-brainers where you say, oh, maybe the bridge should have been designed that way in the first place, and we're actually just catching up with where we should have been 100 years ago in some cases. And while I recognize that the money is not always there to make that happen at inception, certainly when we're playing catch up so far behind, it is incumbent upon us to make it more and more urgent.
Yeah.
So so this is one clear situation where the city council and DCR and many others agree, and it's a matter of just working through it quickly in the best design, with the best design possible.
Yeah, and of course when the Accelerate Bridge program was started, that was before Mass DOT had what's called the Green Dot, or the Healthy Transportation Directive. So the governor and the Secretary of Transportation have now issued a directive that whenever there is a transportation project, there needs to be a component of that benefits the bicyclists and the runners and the pedestrians. And this is definitely would be the absolutely poster child of that. And so let's look at the bridge, the Western Avenue Bridge, where you could have this path along the river. And in a funny way, the Dr. Paul Dudley White, he was the cardiologist of President Eisenhower, and he was the one who said biking is healthy. So there's a public health component. Obviously, the major component is safety, and there's a public health component, but there's also the component of tourism.
Mm-hmm.
You've probably seen a lot of those hubway bikes,
Sure.
and Cambridge is doing a fabulous job in adding more stations and more bike lanes and cycle tracks. But if you are a bicyclist who is not, maybe you might be more daring than some people who are on a bicycle, it's important that there's a place for tourists and families to start biking. So here is the bridge at River Street. So that would create a 7.5 mile long stretch of bicycling that you don't have to fight the traffic. There is something interesting coming down the pike, literally, with the straightening of the pike. And although it's in Alston Brighton, but I think it will impact Cambridge, and it will impact the river. So I'm sure you will be observing what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Alston Brighton is a very interesting development.
Mm-hmm. I'll just say about the importance of these underpasses that biking is an important directive, whether from the governor or just as an initiative that people take upon themselves. And it's been shown that one of the major factors in bike safety, maybe even competing with helmets and other safety paraphernalia, is the number of other bikers. And when people are biking together, when people are walking together, there is a sense of safety in that mass of people. And one major factor in that is, stoppage points, blockage points, points of known danger. And I'll tell you that my kid sister, 11 years my junior, just starting college, she doesn't bike like I bike, and it took a pretty cavalier level of stick-to-itiveness.
What do you mean? She's not used to it? That's the way you are, or how?
I would say that I had to really take the plunge to decide to bike in certain places in this city. There's certain places that people, I think, like my sister, avoid if they are on a bike. And increasingly over time, with more traffic and with some question about how bikers will protect themselves, that may be a large part of the city, actually. For people like my sister who are adventurous and athletic and fun and want to take care of themselves, but not all the way there, not all the way to cavalier, I would say that a large part of the city is off limits, and it would be a shame if Memorial Drive continued to be one of those places.
Yeah, and as they say in bicycling, how many women there are bicycling is an indicator. And
that's true. I just heard that from a meeting with the city. They use that as a major indicator of the bike health of the city. You can correlate how many women are biking with how many bikes there are total, and also with safety, not just penetration.
Yeah, because if it's just a young speedo man, that's one of the part of the population. But if women do it, that means then that their children will do it. And then it becomes part of the life of the city.
I feel like we need a graphic now with a young speedo man
on
a bicycle as part of your presentation.
Well, I want to just, we're getting close to the end of the program. I just want to mention some other things that are happening along the Charles. As you know, the Charles River Conservancy has 2,000 volunteers every year to do the cleanup on Earth Day. On Earth Day alone are 800 volunteers. All the daffodils along the river are planted by our volunteers, the tree pruning, all kind of projects. And then something that I hope that you will be part of as well is swimming. We're going to have more swims this year. We had the historic swim last year. That was a great success, a great splash. And now we're going to continue that, and eventually we hope to have a swimming beach in Cambridge. So there are all these things happening.
I will be swimming with you. As long as we can make it to the gym and look good, we can definitely be swimming together.
No, it's not at the gym, it's in the river.
No, I know it is. I'm saying as long as we can get our beach bodies ready in time, then we'll be there.
Oh, I see.
It's a joke.
We'll give you a big towel.
Give me a big towel and then we're fine. And you would clean up this Saturday, right?
It's Earth Day cleanup. Yes, we have 800 volunteers.
I'll be there with you.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So that will be all along the Charles.
What time and where will you meet?
It starts at 9 o'clock, and if you haven't signed up yet, you can come to the drop-in site, which is at the Welt Boat House. We have, maybe 30 groups have signed up, and they have particular locations. But individuals are still welcome to come to the drop-in site at the Welt Boat House, and we'll find you a job to do.
Good.
Because it's a lot of fun to work along the Charles.
Thanks for the opportunity.
So if you just joined us and missed the show, you can in 2 days you can go to YouTube and find it there, together with over 100 other shows about swimming and biking and cleanup and magazine beach, underpasses, you name it. There are shows there. But Nadeem, thank you for running for office. Thank you for going through this tough election and recount. That was a tough period. And thank you for the energy you give to the city of Cambridge on all fronts, energy, biking, and I know we all are the beneficiaries of it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Renata.